So I've always, I believe, seen life differently than the average person because from my very earliest memories, I was being visited by light beings and galactic beings in my bedroom. And they, this is an ongoing experience my whole life. And so from a very, very early age, I knew that I see the world differently than most other people. I knew that I wasn't supposed to tell the adults about my experiences because I was left with that thought very strong as an imprint. Don't tell the adults, they won't understand. And so I really lived in my own little bubble. And it just was never going to be in the cards for me to follow the pack. And part of that relates to employment. Like I could just never really see myself as fitting into somebody else's bubble and being a good employee, and probably not employable that way.
So welcome to the Corporate Escape Artists podcast, where we talk about stories of escape and evasion, but also how to escape without quitting your job. So one of the things that brought Waxela Sananda to our podcast today is her story of evading corporate America altogether. And if you could tell from this really brief introduction, she's going to have some stories that are extremely eye-opening. And part of the reason Heidi and I fell in love with Waxela was, like, at least for me, especially, her stories and her life has been so out of the ordinary compared to anyone else I've ever met. And it really opened my eyes to a whole new view of both spirituality, but also how to live in this matrix that we live in. So we're super excited to have Waxela Sananda here with us today. And we are going to get into stories of evasion, because as you heard, Waxela has never worked a corporate job, and that is so foreign to me. I don't even know how you would start out. So how could you move from school? I don't know if you went to college, so maybe talk about, like, did you go to college, and how did you evade this course of, in America, you go to college, you get a job, and that's what you do, but you didn't do that. Like, how did you do what you do?
Okay, yeah. So it's so funny just to like your perspective on it. For me, I was raised in Iowa in a Lutheran family. My mom was a Sunday school teacher. She sang in the choir. We were at church a lot of the time. So I was getting all of this, kind of typical Midwestern input, but while at the same time, really not fitting into that. And I knew that I thought differently than other people. I didn't really know how other people thought exactly. I just knew it wasn't like me. So I went to college, Iowa State University. I was very creative. I loved art. So I thought I would be an art therapist. I went to college, I got my art degree. And then, this is a while back, I thought the only way after looking into it that an art therapist could work was at a hospital. And I knew I didn't like going to hospitals. I didn't want anything to do with them. So I'm like, nope, not doing that. So I just got visual studies design degree. And my parents are entrepreneurs, raised by entrepreneurs. So I did have that background of, my dad dropped out of high school at age 16, but because he started his business at 14 and he needed to work, and became an engineer, but he was completely self-trained, and very successful. And so I watched that. That was untraditional. And then my mom, she basically worked for him, but her parents had the same mindset. They created their own business. And it's just like, there's something about being around that. I didn't see anybody in corporate. That wasn't even part of my world. So it was not something that I was naturally going to look for or be drawn to. And I always had that creative spirit. I knew I wanted to do my own thing. And I'm also very, I'm stubborn. I'm not, I don't buy into what people tell me to do. So very easily, like, I kind of have my own ideas about things. And so working for someone else never sounded very appealing to me. I did have like those little random jobs when I was in high school and college just to get me through. But then right out of college, actually, I wasn't out of college. I was in college my first year. after the summer after my freshman year, I lived in a little town called Okoboji, Iowa.
Mhm.
And it was a lake town and there was a big summer influx of people, resort town. And my uncle had bought this little strip mall and he had all these empty stores. And so he came to me and asked me if I'd like to put a store there. And I always had these little creative things that I did on the side. I'm like, sure, that sounds fun. I'll do that, And it's kind of the naivete of not knowing like what it is to even own a store. And long story short, I did great. The second summer, and this was a seasonal business. So the second summer, I was able to buy him out. Like he was an investor, so he invested and helped me get started. The second year, I bought him out, and then it became my own. And then I guess the year that I graduated from college, I moved to Dallas, Texas and started another one there. And then I had two, and I also started another one we had an amusement park in Okoboji and there was no toy store. So I'm like, that's a no-brainer. So I put a toy store there. I had my like fun little gift and bead shop. And then I had one in Dallas. The Dallas one was year round. And then the Okoboji ones were summer only. And I did that for many years. For 15 years, I did retail until I got tired of retail and decided I wanted to do something else. And that's a whole other story. Took off, went to Hawaii, met a shaman, got trained in how to hone and utilize. I had been spiritual and I'd had these spiritual gifts, but nobody had ever really taught me how to use them or what to do with them. And I met someone that trained me in that for 3 years. And then that kind of started the next phase of my career life.
So we'd like to get into that, but first, you're in college and your uncle is like, hey, do you want to open a shop? Like, how do you go from I'm doing studies in college and you finished college still while you opened the shop? How did you even decide, like, how much is the rent? How much do I have to pay for every month? What products did you put in there and how did you get them there? Like, how did you figure all that out?
And how old were you?
I was 19.
Okay.
When I opened my first store. Yeah, it's like I said, the naivete of it. I never talked to someone that said, oh my gosh, it's so hard to do that. Like running a retail store, are you crazy? No, it was just, I remember having this phone conversation with my parent. I think my mom called. She's like, hey, your uncle bought this mall. He wants to know if you want to open a store there. He thinks you'd be good at it. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds fun. And then, so I was coming home from college for Easter and we were going to discuss like, what's it going to be? What are you going to do? And here we have all these conservative people in Iowa, my parents and my uncle. And I came up with this whole concept and presented it to them. It would be called Psychedelic Situation. And I would have lava lamps and love beads and tie-dyes and concert t-shirts and all these kind of things. And they loved it. They're like, oh, that sounds great. There's nothing like that here. And yeah, so that launched my shop. I just it's the naivete. Like I just didn't know. I didn't know what I was stepping into. And that was the best thing ever because nobody told me I couldn't. And I figured it out. I need to get the power turned on. I need to get the phone in my name. I'm 19. I live with my parents. I don't know how to do this stuff. And I'm in a dorm at college, so I just figured it out step by step. Like, oh, I kind of would look at I know how to decorate and that was the fun part. I found some stores that had gone out of business and got my fixtures from them really on the low, on the cheap. My uncle funded me. So I was able to, I had a spending budget, and I just looked at, okay, what can I buy? And then I figured out how, I was near Minneapolis. So 3.5 hours, but that's close when you're in the middle of nowhere. I drove up there and went to market and I'm like, oh, I like these things, and I started picking things out and I bought teeny tiny little amounts of everything and then just watched what worked and then bought more of those things. And even my suppliers were coaching me like, hey, if you buy more than 6 of these at a time, you wouldn't have to call us as often, and it was just, I had fun. It was an art project for me.
It sounds like an education.
Oh, yeah.
That is just like entrepreneurialism 101, right?
Yeah.
Like you're just in it. Oh my God, it's so cool. I had a similar experience, only it was the opposite. It was like a 180. I saw this property in the town that we lived and I like ran all the numbers and I wanted to start a coffee shop. And I was like, oh, this would be so fun. I could make it so cute. And like, as a designer, and I had all these ideas. And then I went and I did my research and I was like asking people, and I didn't have that same type of support. And the people that I talked to were like, you'll never make it. It's never going to work. The numbers can't work. And I was like so deflated by the time I was like, fuck it. Like I'm out. Like I'm not gonna do it. Oh, I can't make, I have to sell this many cups of coffee a day, you know, like all of that, which is good to have some of that, but there was no support in the other way. And I had gotten a little bit of money from an ex-husband who just wanted to pay me off child support. And I was like, oh, I wanted to invest in it. And I was like, you know, I think about that and I'm like, oh, I would have been tied to that too. So it could have been, you know, like it just wasn't meant to be, but what a cool story. I love how in earlier on, Waxela, you were talking about like the rebellious nature of yourself, and you like you just knew, right? Like that you couldn't do that. I feel like in so many people, they get taught out of that in our school systems. And I feel like, do you think like most people are rebellious by nature in like the environment and the world? I mean, just kind of like what happened to me, right? Like kind of extracts that, but you were strong and you were just like, no, I'm gonna keep moving forward. But like what would you say to people, you know, like if they're feeling that rebellion? I don't know, are you rebellious by nature in that way where you like do you know what I'm saying?
So I'm not
Oh.
rebellious by nature, although I became that way after I got into the corporate world. It's like, oh my God, what did I do?
But maybe you were in the school system. I mean, that's kind of what it's meant to do, right? Is to like extract that from people.
All that way.
Yeah.
I mean, what I'm interested in hearing in relation to that is like what I keep hearing from people that are either entrepreneurs within the corporation or became entrepreneurs right from the get-go. You somehow gave yourself permission to open the store, to figure it out, and to do all these things outside of what would be normal. So how do you think you evolved that ability to give yourself permission to do things, especially in Iowa, that would be outside the norm?
Great question. So one thing that I did have was a supportive family. I mean, that really helps, right? We weren't like the super rich or something like that, which is a good thing too, because that like, you know, everybody in my family started with meager means in the beginning. And, you know, my grandparents went through the Depression and, you know, so that was there. But there was just this spirit of you can do it in my family, which I think is really helpful. Like whatever you set your mind to, you know, like you can do it and you can be anything you want to be, that kind of thing. So there's that's super helpful as a foundation. And then the other thing was because I was super intuitive, I was always intuitive. I was always an empath, but I didn't even know at that time what that meant. I was a feeler. I had, my mom would always say, you have a sixth sense for what people are going to want. Like when I was buying for my shops, I just kind of knew like what people would want, which is one of the reasons why it worked. But I mean, to go back to the question, I think I trusted my own intuition more than the outside world. I trusted my inner guidance more than what other people said.
So that's where we get back to Heidi's question about rebellion. Like that is opposite of what our culture teaches. So even though our culture heroizes the, you know, starch independent person, what the culture pushes is conformity through mass media, cartoons, movies, television shows, the schooling system. But you're saying like, I trusted my intuition and I gave myself permission to do these things. Was that a rebellious act? And what do you think of the rebellion kind of culture? Is that something that even came into your mind, or is that just something that you fit a mold of a rebel because you went against the mainstream, but it never entered your thought? Do you think it's conscious, or is that just completely unconscious? And how did you tap into that intuition and trust it?
Okay, so the spirit of rebelliousness was born in me, and I inherited it from my dad and my dad's side of the family for sure. My mom would say when I had a brother, and she's like, if I tell your brother not to do something, he might complain, he might get upset, but he'll follow and he'll do it. If I told, like when I was a kid, if I told you to do something and you didn't want to do it, you would not do it. You would not do it. I just wouldn't do it. I know I was not taking somebody else's ideas for me. I just wouldn't do it. You know, if I got grounded, I just wouldn't accept that. No, I will not be grounded.
I know somebody like that. My
Yeah,
daughter
yeah.
I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah. So, let's see, what was the rest of the question? Sorry.
The question beyond the rebellion part is, how did you learn to trust your intuition?
You know what, this is almost difficult to say because it sounds really bad. But because I had all of these experiences from very, very young, of being visited by what I call galactics, or, light beings that don't look like us, and, other people weren't seeing them. I was receiving guidance from them and information, and probably energy. You want to just think of it as energy and frequency. So I believed myself to be much smarter than everybody else. Which, if you look at books and grade, I mean, I did get straight A's on the dean's list and all that, but beyond that, like, I had a self-concept that I have wisdom and knowledge that other people have no clue about. I I know more, therefore I'm the only authority. There is no authority that could tell me more than I could get for myself. And if I don't know, I've got a source that I can get it from that nobody else has access to, at least not in my little town in Iowa. I'd never experienced anyone else having those types of experiences. So I thought I was the only one. And that it's also, again, naivete and this have you ever met anyone that's waking up spiritually and they know everything and they just want to tell you, but I couldn't tell anyone, but I just had that feeling of, I know everything within me. And so it was easy to trust my intuition because I just know.
That's like the opposite of me. It was like, I had this intuition and I went the opposite of my intuition. And then I was really, I mean, like from a grade standpoint, like really intelligent in terms of getting good grades in school and in college, like top 0.5% of the country in my major. And yet I found like, oh, I'm so smart. And then it got me nowhere. Like basically what I knew, because I was going the opposite way of my intuition, which I only learned recently. I should be following that and not what mainstream wanted me to do. And I kind of followed the mainstream and not my intuition. So I think some of the hints of the stories that you're giving out right now, like you were visited by galactics and they gave you information and people are like, what the hell are you talking about? So maybe give people a sense. So of course you have a book, Waxela, that describes a lot of these experiences. So if you're listening to this and this sounds intriguing to you, especially as we go further into the conversation, tell us the name of your book and where people can find that first.
Okay, the book is called The Love You Crave, A Course in Ascension, Alchemy, and Connection to the Divine.
And where can they find that?
On Amazon.
All right, so Waxela Sananda as the author, and then you can find the name of that
Should spell that.
book on Amazon.
Well,
So
yeah.
it'll be on the show notes.
Yeah.
So you'll see it in the show episode. So that gives people a little teaser of a lot more that's in the book. But can you give us just an example of what you mean when you say you were visited by galactics and got information?
I was gonna say cricket story.
Oh, no.
I know that.
Yeah,
This was
well,
going
that's-
there.
Maybe you have to read the book for that.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I'll just sum it up. So this is my first really major galactic experience that I remember. I was very young, and I was it's one of those things like when you have sort of these multi-dimensional experiences, they like burn an impression where I can remember it like yesterday, so intense and so memorable. So I'm laying in my bed. I hear my mom, I'm trying to go to sleep for the night. My mom's down the hall in the bathroom, which is always comforting, just to know that she's awake in there. And I was on a second story bedroom. And this light came in, and we lived at the top of a hill. And so this light came in my window. And I'm like, even at that young age, I'm like, that's weird because, it's rural Iowa. There's no traffic there. We're at the end of the road on top of a hill, and I'm on a second story, and there the light comes in. And so I knew something was off, well, like different, weird going on here, but I just laid there, and then I felt this energy come in the room. And there was a being at the window that looked very strange. And so he looked like a biped cricket with a spacesuit on, but a full, like as tall, like 6 foot or as tall as any, adult human. And then I was in that sleep paralysis state, so I couldn't move. And I was inside of like a cocoon, like an energetic container. And there were all these frequencies like pumping through it. And all I was trying to do was scream and yell, and I couldn't move, and it was terrifying. And I don't know how long that went on, a little while. And then finally, I was thrashing. I was trying to get out of it the whole time, thrashing. And I ended up on the side of my bed. So I'm this little kid, but I'm stuck to the side of my bed with like pins and needles, like this, like, when your foot goes to sleep, that pins and needles prickly sensation. I'm sticking there. I'm just sticking there. And then suddenly the energy all went out the window, and boom, I fell to the floor. And there was also, like, I didn't mention this, but this energetic cord coming in my window and connected to that cocoon. And that's where like all this energy was coming from there. Fell to the floor. And then I got up, and I'm just kind of like dazed and confused and like, what was that? And then I heard in my mind, don't tell the adults, they won't understand. And I got in bed, and I put the covers over my head and went to sleep. And I never told the adults.
That's so awesome. Is the cord part not in the books? I don't remember that part.
I think it is. That was, I actually went and revisited that in a QHHT quantum hypnosis session later in life, so that because I remembered it, but I didn't know all of this stuff. And I found I got to interview that cricket being in that hypnosis session. I'm like, what was that? And so it was actually a cord connecting me to a galactic council that I'm a part of, and that I pre-incarnationally agreed to send and receive information from. And so that was what that was all about, that kind of inception original experience that I remember so well.
Oh my God, I love the visuals of the story. Can you tell us just a little bit more about Cricket Man? Just like the
Well, yeah, he looked like a cricket head with, like, I don't know, what do you call his antenna sticking out, and in a spacesuit. Very strange looking, terrifying to a young child. But when I interviewed him, when I got to go back in hypnosis, I know it sounds crazy. I didn't know you could do that either, but I did. And my practitioner was brilliant. And he's like, let's ask him questions and see. I'm like, oh, we could do that. Okay. And he's like, you know what? I'm just the messenger. I'm just I got the sense that he was just doing a job. He had nothing to do with it. He's like, don't blame me. I'm just like, don't shoot the messenger here. It's not my fault. I'm just doing my job. And it's like, basically then he showed me it's them. They're what we're connecting you to. You're one of them. You're part of them. And you agreed to this.
It sounds like the cocoon is like the med bed type situation.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I don't, it was an energetic pod, I guess. Yeah.
So a lot of people that work corporate jobs that are probably listening to our podcast are very confused as to some of the terms we're using today. And I will tell you that all this stuff that sounds super woo and out there, like the more I learn about this and the more I talk to people within this community, the more crazy experiences I start to have. And I mean, it's kind of this concept that I like from James True is opening your aperture. So if you think about a camera aperture, and you're very insulated and following all the rules and kind of staying narrowly focused, your aperture is pretty closed down. And so you don't see as much of reality that's all around us. So we think about invisible light, ultraviolet, infrared, gamma rays, X-rays. These are all light that other beings and animals and bugs can see, but we cannot, but it's around us all the time. So if we could increase our aperture for what we can render of reality around us, we see more. And some people like you, Waxela, you're gifted very early to see more reality. So I'd like to ask you two questions. One, why do you think you can see more of reality so early than other people have? And number two, maybe answer this one first. What is QHHT? Because most people are like, wait, you did a what session? So if you could explain QHHT and then why, in my opinion, your aperture, you are able to see more of reality around us. And as people become comfortable with the unknown, they too can see more of reality is what I have personally found true.
Yeah. Okay, so QHHT is quantum healing hypnosis technique. Dolores Cannon was the founder of that. And oh, it's fascinating. And you can go to a practitioner and you can visit past lives, you can visit future aspects of yourself, you can visit all kinds of other realities.
So tell me, like in a session, like, and is it in person? Is it over Zoom? Am I laying in a bed? Is it pitch black? Like, how does it actually work when you say this hypnosis?
I had a session, I told you about it.
I was not present, and nobody in the audience was there for your session.
That's right. Okay.
Okay, so with QHHT, it's done a specific way. Usually you're lying on a bed and your practitioner is working with you in person. And they're taking you, you do a whole induction and then you go on this journey and you start to see yourself. Your eyes are closed.
Okay, wait, yeah, so tell me that you go on this journey, like, am I
It's-
taking drugs?
Okay, no,
Like 4
no.
hours long. It's
Yeah.
like really, really long.
Yeah,
So
I've had a number of
Yeah.
them. So no drugs. You're sober. In fact, they don't even want you to drink coffee before you go in or drink alcohol the days before. So you're really pure when you go in. So you're really pure energy and not influenced by anything outside of yourself. And your practitioner will take you, well, you'll be lying down, you'll go through this induction. It's a hypnosis. So you're under hypnosis, but what it does is it helps you access portions of your mind that we don't normally access. Like you said, and this also gets into the next question, but we're able to open that aperture and see more and experience more with the guidance of a really great trained therapist, practitioner, so that we can go and visit these places that normally we filter out. And so QHHT is one form of that. There is also BQH, Beyond Quantum Healing. A lot of QHHT practitioners after Dolores Cannon passed away, they wanted to do things a little differently, change things. So the purists stayed with QHHT, and then a lot of them went to BQH and other forms. There's also introspective hypnosis, which I'm trained in. There are just lots of different things out there. So it's a hypnotherapy, but that in itself helps open up these doorways. And so I think you asked why at such a young age, why do I think, honestly, I think I wasn't shut down. I think most people are born open. I think we're supposed to be born more open. And if we were in a culture that cultivated that helped us stay open, and the people around us, like a lot of indigenous peoples, they never shut down that ability to see beyond this whatever matrix reality, because they have a culture of support. And while I wasn't in a culture of support, for whatever reason, I maybe because I had such extreme experiences that I remembered them and I stayed creative. I was always doing art. I was always artistic. I was always out in nature. I just let myself be open and I was free to do that. I was also raised in the 70s and 80s when we got to run free outside and, nobody was worried about it. I would be gone all day long outside playing and in nature and just doing my own thing and in my own little bubble, in my own world. So nobody was telling me what to do or how to think or how to do it or what, that nobody told me I was weird until I got to school and, like maybe shared some ideas. I did have trouble making friends. But I did learn to shut that down in a school situation with the adults. I wasn't talking about these other things. That was like my own special thing that I experienced in nature when I'm by myself. And then when I'm with other people, I had this different way of like just to fit in for survival. But so like in those situations, I would have a filter. I wouldn't be seeing all this stuff in school. I'd be in school doing schoolwork. But as soon as I got out of there and I went into nature, then I would open up my vision. I could see energy. I could always see energy. I could see colors, I could see beings, I could see, like I remember being I called it the swamp, but it was a marshy area that I loved to go play when I was little. And I would stand very, very, very still. And I would tune into the ground like ankles and below. I wanted to catch frogs. That's what I was really up to. So I tune into the ground below my feet. And then suddenly my whole vision, my perception would shift and I would be able to see this world that is invisible to everybody else. And it's teeming with life. And not only frogs, insects, it's the whole fairy world down there, and it's just like so much life happening. That's one of my favorite things to do. And I did that everywhere I went when I was alone in nature. And so I cultivated that. I never let that go away. That was my favorite thing. And that seemed more real to me than, the world of school. And, I remember sitting at dinner with my family and just listening to one of their conversations. And I just started laughing because I'm like, this is so ridiculous. Like this, so because it felt mundane and silly to me when I knew myself as so much more than that. We all are so much more than the mundane and this world that we see with our physical eyes. And it would strike me as ridiculous. Like we're all pretending to be these bodies, but that's not what we are. So I think it's more like I learned to filter really well. I can walk into different environments and have different filters. Like I said, I was empathic. I could feel everything. That wasn't comfortable at school or, in big places. So I learned to put this like bubble around myself and my abilities. And then I would only switch it on. I still do it to this day, switch it off, switch it on as needed. And so I can communicate with normal people and hang out with, the normies. And then I can go into like the most crazy galactic group of people and have a great old time. Either way.
It's that chameleon skin of like
Yes.
being able to read the energy and change with the energy and give people, although I do think there's benefit in giving some of the quote unquote normies a little sense of what else is out there. And some of them really resonate with that and they start to become kind of magnetically attracted and interested in like, oh, I want to know more. And I think that's really cool when I see that happen. And that's kind of what happened with me. As I started hearing these things, I was like, nope, none of that's real. Like, why would you bother? This is cuckoo stuff. And then I started getting drawn more and more and then having my own experiences and just completely changed what I thought about reality and have been able to see more. And that seeing more, if you think about these stories of young children, like they have imaginary friends and some of them remember past lives to the point where there's stories of kids that will remember being an older man, like 3 streets down, who died the year before, and they will explain in detail that man's home, furniture, photos in the home, and people will go and check and they're all there. And so they have these open apertures. We all have this when we're younger, and we shut those down. And there was this one story that was told to me. So part of my background is Native American, and I never resonated with that as a kid, except I loved being outdoors. But I did not want to look into what it meant to be Native. But a story that was told to me of the Indian braves is that when they came into Western society, or I should say when Western society came to them and tried to pull them in some of the chiefs were saying, no, our Braves will not be part of Western society because you work everything off of a clock and you need specific regimented time during the day. And our Braves are the dreamers. And if they can't do the dreaming, they can't determine where the food is and how the world works because they learn that through dreams. And dreams, including daydreams during the day, is how I believe they would have thought about opening their aperture and seeing more of reality. So I think they kept a lot of those tribes, from what we're told, kept those things alive, where we shut them down rather quickly and have people conform to this crazy modern society that we live in. So what I'd like to understand is, like, we're sitting here in Florida, there's palm trees around, I'm looking out at the water, it's warm, it's March, so where we live, it's quite cold right now. And you have managed to evade corporate America and live life on your own terms. You're in this beautiful place in Florida that we're vacationing, staying in Waxela's home because it's such a magical place. And can you explain to people like your story arc? Like, you left college, you didn't leave college, you graduated college, you started some retail shops, you ended up in Dallas, Texas. So from what I'm hearing, your Iowa shops were seasonal, so summer focused, not in the winter in Iowa. And then in Dallas, it was a full-time shop. And so somehow from there, you transformed yourself into what it is you are today. And you still have never worked a corporate job, and you're very successful. So can you give us a sense of your story arc and how you ended up where you are today?
Yeah. So I've also, like, I tend to have a lot of energy for projects. When I was in Dallas during that time, I was also doing showroom modeling at the Dallas showroom at Dallas Market Center, and then in my spare time, not running the store. And then I was also like, I had a lot of sidelines in addition to, you know, I was always like just doing more. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to do more. Did a network marketing business during that time as well. And, you know, so just really out there expanding. I did art in my back room when I didn't have customers. I was creating, just always like wanting to create and know more. And so also during that time, I was taking, this is kind of a fun story. There was a metaphysical shop that I stumbled upon near, like, a couple streets from my store in Dallas, and just like found it out of the blue. I'm like, I've never seen that. What is this? What street am I even on a street I'd never seen. I pulled over there, went in, and I found out she's doing dream workshops. She's doing mirror work. She's doing all this really cool stuff, things I hadn't even heard of. This is my early 20s. And I started taking her classes. And then, this is so crazy, I would try and find that store to show people. I wouldn't be able to find the street.
Diagon Alley.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's very Harry Potterish. I would like, yeah, I would, there were several times where I tried to take a friend there or something. One friend ended up going to the classes with me, but anybody else, or like, look for it during a different time of day. Like, I can't find it. But if it was class time, I could always find it. So weird. And so like weird, but also very parallel to my experience of reality. Like, it was probably in a slightly different reality that was only open for me to access at certain times, like when I had my class or when I was supposed to go find it the first time. And so I have a lot of stories like that, lots and lots of stories. But so in a similar way, I was getting these prompts to go to Kauai. I like, just crazy things were happening where I went out for lunch one day and a book about Kauai was on my desk when I came back. I had locked the store, like nobody was supposed to be in there, but there's a book on my desk about Kauai. Then some people would come in, like just some shoppers, and they'd be talking about Kauai. This is Dallas, Texas. It's not like next door, you know? And it was just, I went home. My roommates had a magazine open to Nepali Coast Trail. Like, this would be fun to hike. And that's in Kauai, you know, like over and over and over. Like, I'm going to Kauai. I got it, you know? And so I designed my life to be gone for 3 months. I hired a manager that was going to be taking over my store. And I had a manager anyway, because I would leave in the summertime. So that wasn't that uncommon. But I planned to go for 3 months. And then simultaneously, my friends kept telling me there's a shaman in town. And so this shaman was showing up at all my friends' places. I hadn't seen him. They're like, he reminds us of you. You got to meet this guy. And so one time I went home, I lived in an apartment complex called Moon Mansion. And it was an artist community, but the next door neighbors came over. Hey, that shaman's at our house. I'm like, oh, great, And so I went over and met him. And we ended up talking for hours. And then at the end of that conversation, he said, I'm going to Kauai and I want you to come with me. I'm like, oh, okay. And then he ended up training me for the next 3 years. And he was a walk-in. So, and that's a whole other story. We don't have to go there, but he was very expanded galactically, had access to endless information. And this is before cell phones where, we weren't just accessing the internet, and so it was really like traveling with the spiritual internet. He could get any information and taught me all kinds of things, how to open portals, how to help deceased beings cross over, how to work with the galactics on my terms rather than, because up until that point, I didn't have control over that. They would come and I'd feel inundated by them, but it wasn't like I didn't have strong boundaries. I didn't know how to draw boundaries with galactics. He taught me all of that, how to work with them, how to see into people's past lives, how to like project your consciousness and like, so all of the things that I had been doing sort of spontaneously, he helped me gain some mastery over that course of 3 years.
Oh, Shayla, how did the shaman and you earn money during that time? Because like that, I mean, going to Kauai, that's not cheap. And it sounds, it sounds very like, oh, fantastical, right?
Yeah.
But what's
Yeah.
the reality of that in
Yeah,
that
so I had, my stores were still running without me, so they would send me money. I was receiving money from those every month. I also had saved money along the way, so I did have a savings. And he had family money. He was a trustafarian, we like to say.
Oh.
So he was getting a monthly stipend during that time. And so we didn't, I mean, there were other odd things, like he loved to cook. He would cook for there was a like little coffee shops or whatever. He would go in and do things and cook. And then, but occasionally, not like, oh, this wasn't like a solid gig. And then we lived in Kauai. We lived at this lovely little house, and there was a valley with an organic garden. And so the house was owned by the people that owned the garden, and we did work trade. We did work trade for our rent there. So, where there's a will, there's a way. We were both in training at that time. He was being trained by galactics really intensely, and I was being trained by him, and we were having lots of visitations. So mostly we were in a learning phase, but yeah, there was this income. And also I want to say about that, when you're on mission and you're doing what like I got called to Kauai loud and clear. I chose to follow that mission knowing that I would be supported. Now, I thought I was going for 3 months. I ended up going for 3 years. I did come back and forth, manage things here and there, but mostly I was gone for a large part of that.
So you were gone for 3 years and you managed one retail store?
Then we would come back in the summertime and do the shops up in Iowa as well.
Oh my gosh. So did the shaman have the same type of did he know you were coming with him? I never asked you about that.
I don't know that I ever asked him that. I don't know that I'm not sure, honestly. I mean, I feel like he came and got me, like he came and found me, and we were definitely connected beyond, this world.
Yeah.
But we had a super psychic connection as well. Like he would be out meditating and we would need to go somewhere and I'd send him a telepathic message and he'd get it. Yeah.
So this is where a lot of people in corporate get stuck. It's like, how do I get from here to where I want to be? And often there's these stories that we're running across in this podcast of, well, first I had to trust my intuition and do this thing that was kind of scary that I was being called to do. And I had no idea how I was going to make money at it, how long I was going to stay. And so you had this, what I would just consider like a downtime of learning. Like you were downloading, learning, and training. And you weren't, in most corporate people's mind, progressing your career and making more money and getting promotions. You were taking sort of a break where you were learning what was going to propel you into your next phase. And I look at this as like an arc of music where the beat comes up and you're like, I'm at the top, I'm at the peak, and I want to go higher. But in order to go higher, you first have to go back down and have this period of more quiet introspection, learning, or in my case, taking pay cuts to get to where I wanted to be before you could be propelled higher by doing what it was you were called to do. And it sounds like that was your period of 3 years, which was meant to be 3 months. You spent 3 years learning all these things. So that's the start of your story arc. So from there, I mean, many more things have happened to get you here, but in sort of a summary manner, like, okay, so you're in Kauai, you're learning all these things, you're becoming a shaman yourself. And so like today, we consider you like one of the top shamans that we know, and you have so much access to information and guidance. So how did you go from Kauai to whatever the next step was? Because you're not today managing a retail store in Dallas or
Right.
Iowa.
Right, well, so during that period, I did shut down the Dallas store because it just became too much, too expensive to, like keep that going. So I let that go, and we were still doing the summer seasonal business. But then we did shut that down too. Eventually, it was just time to let it go. Ended up going to Ashland, Oregon for a while. And then that we decided to part ways. I let the kind of all the shops go at that point. And I got, this is one of those things. So it comes back to trust. Like so here I am now at a point where I really don't have an income source anymore. We're splitting up, like we became a couple during that time. So we were splitting up. I knew I had to do something, and I knew I was good at like retail. I had all this new information, didn't quite know, it was cultivation time and some of the most intense, it was downtime, but it was some of the most intense training a person could possibly have, right? When you're doing spiritual training, it's so huge. So I was in this unknown, like total unknown phase, like what's next? And just keep asking, what's next? What's next? And I got a lease opportunity in the mail to get a shop that opened up in this place called the Emporium, Central Emporium, and it was like the prime real estate of Okoboji. And I was like, wow, this is so, like, you just don't get this. When did I ever apply for this? I had no recollection of applying for a lease there. It was like, they say location is everything in retail. So I got this lease in the mail. I ended up going back there, had a super successful shop again, just kind of started it up, different theme, but yeah, and then I incorporated all of the spiritual stuff into that store, and I brought it to that area, and people would come in there. I had waterfalls, and like the environment of it was so inviting. People would come in and just like camp out in there. Like it would drive me crazy because sometimes I had to wait 2 or 3 hours to get to a bathroom break because people would just be in there because they could feel the energy and they were soaking it up. And that just, like that helped me see how I could bring those worlds together. Didn't stay in retail forever, ever, obviously. But again, always following guidance. I would listen. I knew when it was time to leave that. And I got this strong call to go to Austin, Texas. And I had always planned to go to Austin when I moved to Dallas, but I got caught up in Dallas, I had friends there, and never made it to Austin. So I'm like, oh, it's time to go to Austin. And I went there, I sold my Iowa stores. I went there and I found a house, bought the house. And then the first week there, my first week there, I met who became my husband and my son's father.
I was gonna say, so how old was Josiah when you moved to Austin?
She was 8 then.
Oh, it was, okay,
Mhm.
that was earlier than this.
Yeah.
Interesting. So,
And she was a product of
the
myself and the shaman.
Yeah,
So I didn't
right.
put that in there. I didn't think it was relevant, but now it kind of is like, wait, you have an 8-year-old?
yeah, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
like this is so interesting. Okay, so then, from Austin, what did you do in Austin?
So in Austin, I started out, first of all, I had just sold my businesses. So it started out just like, I'm setting up the house and I figure out, and then I started a business that was bamboo clothing. So organic bamboo with low impact dyes. And then I was really into Masaru Emoto. He had put out the book, The Hidden Messages in Water. And I'm like, I'm going to make t-shirts and clothing that have these powerful symbols on them. And so I met a guy who did Japanese kanji symbols, and we worked together and got these symbols worked out, and they started printing on t-shirts, and then made this beautiful line of bamboo and organic cotton shirts with low impact dyes. So they were environmentally friendly, loved doing that. And then simultaneously, I was always an artist. So I started sculpting and selling my works on Etsy. And this is when Etsy was like kind of young, and I became a sort of an Etsy favorite. My shop was called Spirit Mama, and that was also my clothing brand. And so I developed that, and I did that for a lot of years, and quite successfully. And I loved, so I had my art studio, and then I got to be a mom of my son, Gabriel, and work at home, create my art, sell my art online, do festivals with the shirts, sell some wholesale shirts. And so that was my next business.
Wow, there's so many. I remember you showing me some of the images of that store, but I didn't remember that part of your story. I love this interview because I like get to recreate your whole trajectory. That's so fun. Before Thaddeus, you were talking about like the melody, or not the melody, but the rhythm of the I feel like it's more like a season, and I like how we all go through seasons, right? And in so many different microscopic ways and macroscopic ways. And like thinking about the beginning of this conversation, it was really macro, and we're just like kind of zooming in on like, what did you do then, and the next thing, and like the season of you working with the shaman, and how does it impact like now, right? Like, holy crap, I just got tingles on my legs. But I think in part 2, in the second session, we're going to dive further into what it is you do now, and how you are still an entrepreneur after all these years, and you never gave in, right? Like that's amazing.
It's funny that you would even say give in, because to me it was just not,
Yeah.
it wasn't an option.
Right.
It was never going to happen for corporate for me. But yeah, there's a couple more iterations.
Yeah.
that are fun.
So I've got one more question for this hour, and stay tuned for hour 2, where we will dig into everything that Heidi just talked about what Waxela does now, but also like, if you're interested in this concept of the new earth and what's happening with finances and technology, and where are we headed, and why are things so different, I hope you're all realizing right now, it's March 2024, that things are not the same as they used to be. And they're not going to be, and we're moving into this whole new phase of where it is we live, whether you call it the Matrix or Earth, or you think we're on a planet or not. We're going to talk about that in the next session, including one of Waxela's brand new ventures that I'm super excited about. So I would love for you all to stay tuned to hour 2. As we close out hour 1, we're talking to a lot of people that work corporate jobs that either want to get out, and I still think like a lot of people can get out without losing their job. There's a way to do it, but you have to be very intentional. And other people are just going to want to get the hell out. So from everything that you've learned, what advice would you give somebody who is in corporate? If they have a meaningless job, they can't stand it, they want a change, what would you tell them?
I love this. And this is what I tell my kids too, is you've got to follow your passion. And the thing that happens when like there's something that just lights you up and makes you so happy, then there's a part of you that needs to be doing that. And there is probably a way to make a great living from doing the thing that is your passion. Like, art and spirituality have been my passions, and that's supported me my whole life in creative ways. And so just tune in and follow your heart. And if you're passionate about something, the energy will come. If you believe in it and you put your heart and soul into it, you'll make it happen. It will happen. And you have so much help beyond yourself. You start expanding that aperture beyond yourself. and allowing that help to come and saying things like mindset is so important in this. Like, I know that the perfect people to meet and help me further my vision for my life's purpose and my next phase of work are going to come into my reality. They're here already. It's just a matter. And then you start talking about it, and you start sharing about it, and you start meeting those people. It sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's not. It's just the way this reality works. It's like magic then, and things start to come together. And you also have to be willing, like, save up a little money first, be willing to go through those periods where maybe there's not as much financial abundance, but you're building toward your next thing. And then that abundance that you find in doing your passion work is so much more holistic than just getting money to do a job.
I love that. And I think there's a lot of contention around follow your passion versus give people what they want to make money as an entrepreneur. And often people say, well, if you follow your passion, then you're going to find yourself working on the business and not in the business doing what you love. So I'd love to discuss a little bit of that in hour two of how you've managed to continue living your passion and having a business without feeling burnt out from the business part of the business. So we're going to switch over to hour two, but before we do that, tell people what it is you do, where they can find you, how they can work with you if they want to work with you. And you can go ahead and talk about too, like, I know you've got a business working with cryptocurrency too. So if people are interested in that, join us at hour two, but you can tell them where to find you now and ask more questions about any of the things that you do and where they can access all of that.
Okay, so yeah, I do a lot of things, but primarily I have a course that is called Embodied Ascension. It's a 6-month course that I guide people through, and it's really about getting into your body and raising your frequency and just like making your life more holistic. Like I said, being more present in your body, and all of your relationships start to work, and all of these like business ideas start to gel, and people have really amazing transformations in taking that course. It's for someone who's either spiritually just awakened or someone who's been on the spiritual path for a while. The coursework really meets you where you are. I channeled a lot of that in, so it's got this multi-dimensional effect. I do some one-on-one coaching with people. And then I also work with a technology called Alkiwan, and it's their photon light spheres that are a galactic technology that came into my world, and it's just really rocked my world. And so you can find all of that on my website, waxelasananda.com. I also have a YouTube channel that's my name, Waxela Sananda, and those two things will get you everywhere you need to go to see my stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Waxela. Maybe we bring out an LQ1 ball for hour two.
Yeah, so if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening and you want to see the Alki one, it's something that I did not believe in whatsoever. But I've even had like really powerful experiences with this, and you have to experience it. So come on over to YouTube and watch the video portion. We will show the Alki one ball, but you'll only be able to see the full episode if you're a member of our Substack community. So you get the full second hour, as well as all of our written content under that membership wall. So please join us, howtoescapecorporate.substack.com. All right, so thanks, Waxela, so much. Everyone else, join us on hour two.
It's all right. So I was going to a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza events. Started that in 2014, I believe, is when I went to my my first course, the preliminary course, and then I dove right in and started doing the advanced courses. And that for me, that work, it connected me to people, really cool people. It really just helped me expand. It helped me hone my mind and bring, he brings the science in. So I was really enjoying that work, and expanding all along. Everything we do is an expansion if we let it be. And then I met someone there that had tried this thing called the Lucia light, and it's Lucia number 3. And I heard her talking about it. I'm like, wow, it sounds really interesting. I gotta figure out how to do that, how to try that. And as it turned out, the distributor of that was coming to Florida, like right after the Dr. Joe event when I was coming back. And so I got to go for a session, and I was really just like, wow, this is like, it's like a psychedelic experience with no psychedelics. It's just light, but it has you go on this journey, and really amazing things can happen. So in that session, I'm like, this is for me. I want to do this as a practitioner. I want to bring this to people. And it was crazy expensive for me at that time. For anybody really, but I decided, like it's again, listening to that inner calling, listening to that, like, I just know this is right. And when I tuned into it and I tuned into the experience, I knew that it would connect me to people that would be instrumental in the next phase of my life, whatever that might be. And so there was a lot of trust involved. I had to borrow money to get it, but I did, and I became a Lucia light practitioner and ended up being very successful in that, and I did several tours, but one I started in Mexico and then came up to Florida and then went across the US and went all the way to Kauai, all the way, and so I had all of these events along the way lined up, and that was so much fun. And so Lucia Light connected me to so many amazing people. However, it's even though, the light's doing its work, it just to be a practitioner is pretty labor intensive. You have to attend the sessions, and that flashing light, being in front of that as a practitioner can be kind of wearing on your eyesight and your body after a certain amount of time. And so I knew maybe I didn't have a lot of longevity there, and I wanted to incorporate it into other things. Well, I was also, I do sound healing, I have a gong and crystal bowls, and I was learning all of that at the same time. And then I got this push. And when I say push, it really felt like the divine was pushing me into a new area of work that I wasn't quite ready for, but what I've learned along the way is that when I get one of those pushes, I have to do it. I just have to do it, or things won't go well. And so that's what was happening. And what it was that the next phase is I started doing summit series, and bringing together, it's called the Alchemy of Ascension, which I also have a podcast by that name. And so it's bringing all of the things together, sort of like all of the wisdom, all of the things I've learned, all of the shamanism, all of the ascension work, bringing that together to bring to the world. I left out, I did start my course. I started teaching my ascension courses before that, but then it was this, okay, now I get to really get out there. And so I remember when I was recording my intro video for my first summit, simultaneously I was launching my book. I wrote my book around that time as well. It's about 6 years ago now. And wow, I remember launching, or like when I was recording that, it's just a 2-minute video that here's a little bit about who I am, here's a little bit about my story, and here's what the summit is about, just to kind of so people can get a taste of it. I cried when I filmed that video, because it was in a way, it was my coming out publicly. People who knew me knew my history, people I'd worked with had an understanding of what I was about. But for me to put that out there publicly felt like, just like being naked in front of the world, and I couldn't imagine talking about this stuff so openly like I do now, and like I have been doing for the last years. So there was a huge hurdle to cross there, and a surrender to get through. But once I went through that door, everything just opened up and everything worked. And I started doing summits, and people were saying yes to speak on my summits. And I've done 6 of them so far. I'm going to do the 7th one is in September. And so I get to connect with amazing people. I get to get my work out there, their work out there, all of these collaborations. And then alongside of that, the podcasting and doing the ascension work in course. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Beautiful. Waxela, one of the things, while you're talking in the first hour and, this story, I was thinking about all the things that you've done along the way. It seems like you have like this Midas touch, like this, everything you touch kind of like works out. And I mean, honestly, like you trust and you have intention and you have like intuition and like all these very feminine aspects. And then the yang of like doing the thing, taking inspired action. I think one of the things that I'm interested in hearing too, along with all the, like all the success, what about the failures? And what have you learned? Like, what has been, like, can you speak into a failure that you're like, you know what, this is where I learned, this thing so well. And James True talks about that. And Dice was teaching me this the other day. He calls it vitriol. So we're learning through this hardship time, right? And so I think it would be really interesting because it's like, it's not all Midas touch. I have it all, like, like this, I don't know, perfect, story of like, I'm success. But it's like, what has been, like, what had to give during all that time? What was something that you're like, okay, this is something where I'm still continuing challenging or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, for the sake of brevity, I haven't been mentioning every single one of the new ventures started out at zero, or started out at, now I've got to figure out how to do this new thing, which actually I love that part, the creation part, because you're birthing a new project. It's fun for me. I mean, there were times in Hawaii where we lived in a tent on the beach. There were times where, we really had to scrape by. So at the start of something new, with the exception of when I sold businesses and then I had that capital to go forward with, I feel like I have always been willing to do whatever needs to be done. And every one of these businesses, every one of these journeys, there were times that weren't thriving. There was the startup time where it's like, oh my gosh, we got to make sure I have enough to get the rent paid, and all of the steps are there. But the willingness to persevere and the trust and the surrender, I think, are the tenacity. That's a huge one too. Tenacity in sticking with it. And of course, every one of these things has elements that aren't fun. There's the fun part. There's the part that you love and you're passionate about. I'm like, oh, this is so much fun. But then there's like the video editing or, the behind the scenes stuff that's tedious. And yeah, there were times where sometimes I had team and sometimes I've done 100% by myself. And the willingness and tenacity and foresight to be like, okay, if I make it through the hard times, here's what's coming and it's worth it.
Beautiful. We just interviewed Mike T. Nelson yesterday, and what we found out, there's a common thread. It's like he's willing to do the hard things. He's willing to do the things most people don't want to do. And so that is where, like, that pinpoint of this is where success, stems from. So I feel like that's kind of synonymous with, what you're saying. Do you have any questions?
So you have the Luciolite. You've got your Alchemy of Ascension podcast. You have a big YouTube channel as well. And you've brought in two more pieces. And as we move forward into what a lot of people are calling the new earth. So sometimes that's new for corporate people, sometimes they've heard of it, but essentially it's the changing of energies here on this place where we live. And you've got some new technologies. And I kind of know a little bit about the story personally of Alky One, but I'd love you to tell everyone what is Alky One. And at the very end of this, we're going to do an Alky One prosperity meditation. So stay tuned for that. So what is Alky One? How did it find you? And what do you do with it? And then the next thing I'm going to ask about is cryptocurrency, because like my passion in like the place where we're headed is like we're changing what we used to call currency, which was a water-based concept, currency in banks, you think of the river banks, and we're moving to this digital or etheric form, which fits right in with all the spiritual work. So I've never heard that story of how you found cryptocurrency and you actually make a pretty good income, passive income at this point from what you found there. So let's talk about Alky One and how it found you and what is Alky One.
Yes, so this is one of the examples. This is the master sphere, the biggest size that we have.
So if you're not on YouTube, go to YouTube, you can see it. But if you're joining us here on the podcast, just on audio, we're looking at, I mean, it's maybe like half the size of a bowling ball. It is a clear glass looking sphere. It's pretty substantial. Like, I don't know what it weighs, like 3 or 4 pounds. I mean, it's pretty heavy. It's a solid ball of like crystal and glass.
More than 3 pounds.
It's very heavy. So there's different sizes of these. So yeah, keep going with the story.
Okay, so it is, yeah, I mean, just the physicality of it. It has 15 different elements in it. Some are rare, some are easier to find. With quartz, and then done, like, put all together in this very high quality glass made in Czechoslovakia. And it is the coolest technology. I mean, it looks like a glass ball, okay, or it looks like a crystal ball. And yet it's so much more than that. So it's made by this man who channeled it, and he channeled the recipe and channeled it through he said it came from the 7th dimension, which is the angelic realm. And it's also a galactic technology. And it came to assist the humanity in our ascension. And he was the one that received that. And he worked with the recipe for years before he released it to the public, because he wanted to be sure. And he's also got a scientific side. So he's done some testing, and he's like tested people's blood when they held it and sees like positive benefits. But beyond the sciencey stuff, the spiritual aspect of it is it clears, it only puts out, it's photon energy. So it's emitting photon energy, but it doesn't absorb, where just a regular crystal or crystal ball is going to absorb energy, like send and receive. This is only sending out. So it's receiving galactically energy, but it's only putting out the energy, like it's not receiving our energy.
So that's where I hear of like, oh, when you've got a crystal, you have to remember to clear or
Right.
clean your crystal, because it's taking in all these energies that we give it, like let's say negative energies, and then it stores that energy and eventually it has to be cleared. So you're saying this technology is different, where it doesn't need clearing. I mean,
Right, it clears everything. I put this next to my crystals and it clears them. So it'll do all of that for you. And it's honestly, it's like having a shaman in your house doing the clearing work all the time on your body, on your space. It also has this ability to attract, we could call them densities, like lower density. And the more, like, the weirder way to say that is entities that are maybe not as high frequency as what you want around you. And a lot of people have those traveling with them, whether they realize it or not. It will attract them and transmute them, like help them move to the next space, out of your space, and go where they need to go. So it really protects your energy. And I do that kind of work. I do house clearings for people. I do space clearings for people. I have done entity clearings for people, not my favorite thing to do, but I really like having a little friend do that for me, so much so that I sleep with one in my bed, because with the shamanic work that I do, in my dream time, I'm oftentimes opening portals. Having the support of Alkiwan in my bedroom has made it so that I don't have to worry about keeping the space clear and guarding my boundaries so much. Like, I can take some of the pressure off and just let Elkiwan do that for me, which has been really transformational, even in my own work. And the entities that come through are so high frequency. I should say the spirit beings or the light beings, so high frequency and so beautiful with this technology around.
so this is something that you found and you worked with,
Mhm.
and you kind of fell in love with the technology so much that, I mean, if I understand it right, you're like the sole United States distributor
Yeah.
now of this technology, because you found it so powerful to work with. So if somebody is like, well, what do I do? Like, I can put it in my house and it clears entities, it does all these other things, but like, how would somebody work with something like this crystal ball? They just look at it, or do you do
Yeah.
something with it?
Such a great question. It's such a great question because I do have people sometimes that will buy one. And then maybe a couple months later, they'll message me and they're like, nothing's really happening. Why isn't it working? And I'm like, well, this one guy in particular sent me that message, and I tuned in energetically to see what was going on. And what I saw a picture of a laptop in a box unopened. And I saw an image of a treadmill in like a far off room that's nobody ever gets on. And I'm like, oh, he hasn't even worked with it. He hasn't done anything with it. And so I asked him, I'm like, where is it? What have you tried? And he's like, well, actually, it's still in the box. I'm like, well, you're not going to connect to the internet if you don't take your computer out of the box. You're not going to connect to the galactic internet if you don't take your Alkiwan out of the box. So the way that you begin, first of all, is just get it out and start to spend time with it. Start to have it in your energetic presence. And you like, it's attuning to you energetically. It's also going to be working on your biofield, but permission basis, where it's not going to come and interfere and like knock on your door and say, hey, are you available to work with me right now? You have to do that. So the ways that you can do that, you pick it up, you meditate with it, or you sit next to it and meditate, and you tune in to it as an energetic portal, and then you allow it to start interacting with you. Now, some people that are in tune with their intuition, they're going to be immediately feeling galactic energies. That happened for me. I felt my angelic body the first time I held one. I have a woman that came to an event I did with one recently, and she's like, oh my gosh, what is this? My people are talking to me through it. And what she meant was like her off-planet people, her star family, her galactic family was communicating with her through a sphere. And I know that probably sounds weird to people that have never experienced that. You can also think of it as your higher self, or your higher consciousness, or the angels, if you believe in angels, whatever works for your vision of, of the metaphysical world.
And
But
I actually experienced this personally, where so Waxela and Heidi and I were running a mastermind in Florida here a couple weeks ago. And Waxela had brought the Alki one into the mastermind and just had one sitting on the coffee table. And we all kind of sit on this couch area in the living room and listen to someone talk about their business. And it was Waxela's time to talk about her business. So we had people coming in from outside the mastermind, from the local community. And they were filtering in and sitting down, and this one lady was like, oh my God, what is this thing on the table? Like, I feel all this energy coming off of it. It was the Alki one, and she immediately felt drawn to it and felt like this massive amount of energy coming from it. It was like really vocal about like, you need to tell me what this thing is, and I want to hold it and like do some work with it. So I've even experienced like where people will be really enamored by just having it in the space if they're really tuned in. And that was like eye-opening for me, just to see like, oh wow, like people really feel that energy.
that's true. And one like caveat to that is there is a certain frequency range that this is working with. And so people that are super drawn to it like that, like I was, are working in that range, or going to be working in that range. And that's why they feel the attraction and the draw and like, oh my gosh, what is this? I have to know more. And not everybody's that sensitive, and you don't have to be that sensitive. It's like, if you feel a calling, if you're like, oh wow, I really have to know more. If you look at it and you're like, what is this? I don't know, but I think I need to, it's calling you on that frequency. And it probably has something to share with you and something to open up and wants to work with you. And a lot of people can feel that. Some people that aren't as much in tune with how they feel, they might, it might just be like a pull toward it, or super curiosity. So, but basically people are going to order one if it's not for you, you're not even going to be drawn to it. You're not even going to want it. So there's that.
So you've got this Alki one technology, so you're working with it more frequently. And at the end, we will do the prosperity meditation with the Alki one. So what you've described before is that frequency and energy is sent through anyone listening to this, even if it's not live, if it's recorded, you're getting some of the Alky One energy during this prosperity meditation. So tune in if you want to, and if you're interested in feeling what some of that energy is like in working with the Alky One. And the next thing that I wanted to talk through is like, you did this thing. So I've always been interested in cryptocurrency and like this moving from the energy of water from Pisces to the energy of ether, which is like the Aquarian new age. People like to call it the new age. I don't like that name because it's very polarizing for a lot of people. But most people should recognize we're moving into an era where the currency, the things we use as money, is changing. So I don't carry a lot of cash around, and most people, that's all they had was cash. And now everyone uses a credit card. So it's like everything is already digital, whether you know it or not. We're using credit cards. The numbers in your bank account are digits. They're ones and zeros. They're not actual real dollar bills sitting in the bank, to the point where if everyone in the US wanted to cash in their bank balances into hard physical cash, there is not enough paper cash in the country or the world in order to do that. So everything's already digital. So people get a little triggered sometimes when they hear digital currency is coming and everything's going to be digital, because frankly, it really already is. But with all that said, you've gotten into some digital currency work as part of what it is you do. And I'd love you to just talk a little bit about that, because I think you've been very successful in that in a very short time.
Yeah, so I was drawn to cryptocurrency all the way back when I first heard of Bitcoin, which was shortly after it came out. Unfortunately, at that time, I didn't know anything about how to get involved with that. Hindsight's always 20/20 on those things, right? But every time I heard about it, I felt that little pull, that little like, I want to know more. I'm curiosity. I want to know more. I want to follow that path. So it was about 4 years ago. It was actually, my daughter was dating a guy who was into cryptocurrency, and I'm like, oh, finally someone that can show me how to do it. And he was really generous with showing me how to get on my first exchange and all that. So that was when, maybe it was 5 years ago now, but that's when I started to follow that path and just start to accumulate some cryptocurrency and play and learn, learn as you go. And I guess it was a little over a year ago now. I had been slowly accumulating, learning, that part of it is just education. Like, and also I want to say, anybody that is thinking of getting into cryptocurrency, you want to play with money that is not like, that's expendable, money that it's kind of like gambling. So you never know if you're going to lose your investment. So just to be cautious when you enter the world, not to like be like, oh, I hear other people are successful in it, I'm just going to dump all my money in and see what happens. It doesn't work like that. You want to
It's always bad.
you want to be careful. So again, like following the intuition, and I remember I had this like inner calling. I know what it was. It was several people reached out to me in my community. So in my following, one after another, that said, I really want to work with you, but I'm having financial difficulties and I just, I can't sign up for your course or, hire you right now. And what kind of advice do you have for me? I'm like, well, not a financial advisor. So anyway, that had come up several times. And so I knew it was like, anytime something repeatedly comes into my field, especially from my following, like, this is something I need to pay attention to. Perhaps I could find a solution and then just put the query out there, and see what happens. And so I had done that. I had just asked what I would call the divine or higher guidance. If there's something for me to see around this, let me know. And it was within like 24 hours, this cryptocurrency project showed up in my field, and I started kind of looking at it, researching it. And then I felt a positive. I'm like, yeah, and I listen to my body. I listen to my, it's not just my mind. I don't just rationalize things. I go by, how does my body respond to this? If something is for me and it's a yes, I get this uplifting feeling in my energy body. I feel like bubbly and effervescent, and like my heart opens. If it's a no, I get the opposite. My heart feels shut down. I feel like a drained energy. And so I pay attention to those physical like clues that my body gives me. I do the research, that's the mental piece of it. And then if this is like a yes, if it's a holistic yes, then I'll take the action to do the next thing. And so I did that. I started small, put some money into this project, and it started paying off, and I kind of caught the bigger vision, and I started doing that and started sharing that with people. And like it turned out that it took over, like it surpassed the income that I was making from my other business. And that provided me with this time, and this is pretty much passively, but it provided me with this time and space to take a step back from my spiritual and ascension work to really to get more grounded in my body again and just let myself have space to be. Because in my whole history in my career, there have been like many iterations of business, but I had never just taken like a year off or taken off enough time. And I was at that point where I just felt like I need to, I just think it would be lovely to have some space and time to just allow myself to be. So this provided me with enough passive income to pay all my bills and have plenty of extra that I was able to do that for some time. And I was also growing my investments. And so it was just a wonderful project that kind of landed in my field that I got to play in. They have actually closed that iteration of the project, and the next one will be announced soon, I'm sure. But also other projects have come my way, and some of them, and just please be warned, anybody that's listening, in cryptocurrency, there are a lot of rug pull projects. There are a lot of projects that do not pay off, or you put money in, you know, you lose your whole investment. So please do your due diligence if you're looking at any project, and you never know, you know. But I use all of those signs and feelings, and then of course, and out like my own analysis and asking people, what do you think? And I make my own decisions. So everyone needs to do that for sure.
And I think that's, it's something really to take note of, that in the cryptocurrency space, which is going to be bigger in the future, we're only at the infancy of, just think about like how many people you know around you have significant funds. Uh-oh. What happened here? Battery died.
Oh, the battery.
At least we're recording.
I
Did you?
saw it just go like blank. I was
Oh,
like,
good. So it just happened?
I don't know.
Oh, you just.
I just saw something. I was like, oh, I just wanted to check it.
That's why I like to plug it in,
Sunshine.
but I didn't have
There's
a
the
plug
sun.
out here. So we got that part of the audio there, which is good.
Would you be able to slice that in?
That's what we have to do on one other. Yeah, Brian, but yeah,
Hopefully it wasn't very long.
no, we can find out, actually.
We should wrap this up. We're already a half
Yep.
hour, so
That's
let's
what I
wrap
was-
up this part and then move into the meditation.
That's not gonna be very long.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Can I hold?
Sure. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
I'm like a little kid. I'm like, today I feel so much more calm with the energy. Yeah,
Evenly integrated.
just last night was a little like, it's crackly. Yeah.
It could be too, like, yeah, I don't know, lots of things.
We were talking, it was like the Zazen Lounge, the
Mhm.
Gone, Elky one.
All the
It was
stuff.
so much
You were
stuff.
probably over.
Yeah.
loaded. You just had too much.
Yeah. Yeah. So funny, we have a lot in common with like growing up, like all three of us were like out in nature.
In the
all day
Midwest.
long, in the Midwest, and then you're like coming to Minneapolis, so we're like in each
Yeah.
other's, you know,
Yeah.
somewhat frequency.
Sphere.
Sphere, yeah, it's funny, I didn't know that you would come up to Minneapolis.
Yeah, because it was it was equidistant Minneapolis to Des Moines, and at
Okay.
that time Des Moines wasn't a cool city.
Yeah.
It is now.
Okay.
But at that time it was.
And Minneapolis was a cool city,
Right.
and now it's not.
Yeah, there's that too. It was so fun. Oh my gosh, I loved going up there. That
Yeah.
was like the best.
I used to go to a lot of events at the Walker, like the after hours parties and stuff like
Yeah?
that. It's so fun.
Yeah, thanks.
Sick.
when you were talking about like your vision at the, when you were like little and you look at all the, you know, like the fairy like world or whatever, did they talk about that in the Celestine prophecy? Is that what they're teaching you?
Shifting your vision
Yeah.
to see energy,
Yeah.
probably, yeah.
Is there a word for that? I was trying to explain to you guys, so is it, why, they call it like widening your perception, or is there some kind of like?
I don't know if there's a specific term, but it is like, I liked opening your aperture.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And
I think you're gonna love James True.
Yeah.
He comes up with like the stuff and Dice is starting to talk a little bit like that too. He'll like bring things in like the arc and like those types of, that was really, that you keep bringing up the arc thing from yesterday.
I wasn't thinking about it from yesterday.
I know, but it's,
Story arc.
but I've never heard you say that. And then she said that yesterday. I was thinking too, like the welding arc. The light that brings, so you can't look at it, it's so much light. It's interesting.
Okay, let's finish this part and go to that. I'll start off with what I was saying.
Alibaba.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Shayla, what's her?
I don't say that, Alibaba. What's going on here?
So what I heard from the cryptocurrency discussion is be careful that you don't see it as like winning the lottery and that it's always going to be successful and you're going to make a lot of money. It sort of is like winning the lottery where some money that you put in is not going to be a winning ticket and you get nothing out of it. So I've run into cryptocurrency projects where I've put in, you know, $3,000 or $4,000 and they went to zero, like nothing left. I lost all the money. And the other thing for people to know about in the cryptocurrency space is it can be intimidating to learn the technology and figure out how do I make a wallet and how do I get money into the wallet and then what do I do? And there are people that want to quote unquote help you and they will be stealing your money while they're helping you. They're called scammers. And in the cryptocurrency space, you probably heard stories of people getting scammed out of tens of thousands of dollars. And that definitely happened to me. I did not have a lot of money to invest in crypto and I lost just about all of it, which was $10,000 that I put in to a scammer before I knew what I was doing, trying to buy an NFT. And that was a very bad idea. So I've gotten a lot more intelligent on how I do my investments. There is lots of money being made in the crypto space every single day. So I really encourage people not to dismiss it. I really, and I believe you're on the same page, that I believe and I know that that's the way of the future. And not every cryptocurrency or crypto project is going to get anywhere. A lot of them, I think there's tens of thousands of cryptocurrencies right now, and a lot of them are going to go to zero. They can't all make it. So do your own due diligence. Waxela has some projects. You have projects that you're invested in. You've done really well. There's some new projects opening up. So if you are interested in the cryptocurrency space, I think what you do well with Shayla is get on a call with somebody and really explain the space to them, explain what it's all about and guide them. And like, if you're willing to invest some money, it's money that you're willing to part with, because this is a pretty risky investment, but you can do really well. So I know I've made like thousands of percent. I was telling Shayla yesterday, I put in $50 to this cryptocurrency and I made $900 on my $50 investment. I mean, where else can you put in $50 and get about $1,000 out within a year? And that's what I did. It's not like I made $1 million. I mean, I wish I would have put in $1,000. I probably would have, but I put in $50 and that was money I was willing to lose. I knew that that was venture capital, that I'm going to put in this $50. I might never see it again. And I made $1,000. It felt really good. So knowing some of those risks is really key. And knowing also that there is a lot of money to be made. And what I was going to say is the space is so young. If you think of all the trillions of dollars in the stock market, the crypto market is like what most people would consider the tech stock market early on. Like if you were an early investor in Yahoo or Google, this is the opportunity in the crypto market now. But again, not all of them are going to make it. There's a lot of opportunity. And most people don't even know that Bitcoin is a $1.3 trillion asset. So there is $1.3 trillion as of March 6th, 2024, invested in Bitcoin right now. So there's a lot more money than you think invested in these projects moving forward and being the new digital currencies. So what we want to do is give you another opportunity to let anyone who's listening know how you would guide them in getting better at life. So they're in these corporate jobs, they want to do something different, they want to enjoy their life. What's one or two pieces of advice you would give them? And then we'll move into a prosperity meditation with LP1.
Yeah. So the first thing that comes up along those lines is feel more. Don't just approach life with your mind, but, and I've alluded to that throughout this whole conversation, approach everything in life with a holistic approach where, yeah, you have the way you think about it, the way you feel about it, the way your energy operates around it. And does it lift you up? Does it bring you more life? And that is a good way to guide yourself on what to do next.
So I love the part right before this where you said, well, I felt within my body if it was a yes. And I think that's part of the intuition that many people are ignoring. It's like they get in their head and like, I'm going to write the pros and cons in columns, and I'm going to think about whether this makes sense. And just because it works out on paper doesn't mean it will ever work out in reality. And so you're tuning into the feeling basis and saying, is it a yes or not? And it sounds like you've been very successful following that feeling guidance.
Yeah, there's a huge piece there, and it's the willingness or even the surrender to feel. And, this is myself included. A lot of people will shut down, especially, we're all sensitive to some degree, some people more than others. You hear this word empath. You're an empath. You feel everything so intensely that there's this tendency to shut off feeling altogether. And for men, society trains you not to show emotion, not to be in touch with your feelings, essentially. So this, for me, a really, really key piece is opening up to my body is this incredible sensory machine. It has superpowers. It can sense so much more than my mind can get, and so to allow yourself to trust your body, when you meet someone and your energy goes down and you don't feel good around them, or that's your body saying, hey, there's something incompatible. There's something here that's not quite right. To listen to that, or vice versa. You meet someone, you just feel drawn to them. Your body's telling you, your energy is telling you. So that willingness to be a greater perceptor of the world, use more of the tools that you've been given, not just your mind to think, is this good or bad, but is this right or wrong for me? But your whole energy system, your body, you can feel energy if you try, or you don't have to try. You probably do if you just stop filtering that out and open up and feel more. You're going to be working with more resources, and your intuition is part of that. People will call it your gut feeling. Like pay attention when you feel something and get curious. Ask questions, ask yourself questions. I ask my body questions all the time. Why are you feeling that way? What's that about? What's it connected to? What more do I need to know about this? And when you get curious, and then you also train yourself to open up and allow that, that's a huge piece. And the other piece of that, in the realm of living a better life, is your mindset. And something I'm pretty passionate about is training my mind to perceive life, even though, like, I'm not, I'm trained in shamanism, so I'm familiar with the dark side. I've encountered a lot of dark stuff. I know what's out there. I know that bad things happen in the world. I'm not naive that way. Not just one of these light chaser people. It's like, oh, everything's love and light, and I'm just gonna pretend nothing bad happens in the world. No, I know it's all going on, and I have trained my mind to, even though I know these things are happening, I expect the best. I expect good things to come from me. I know, like I have a little note on my mirror next to my desk that says the universe is working for me and working to support me, as something to that effect. But it's always like this mindset of it's all happening for me all the time. In the challenging moments, it might not feel like it, but I know there's a bigger thing going on. Everything is always happening for me and for my evolvement, for me to grow, for me to expand, for me to be able to be a bigger contribution to the world, for me to be a better person and a more positive impact on the world. And so it's a mindset that I've cultivated. And, you know, I hear so many people say, I have so much negative mind talk. What do I do? It's a training, and that's where meditation comes in. It's not always easy, and quite often it's very difficult to settle that down, especially if you haven't practiced that, but to let your mind settle and tune in to your greater self, tune into your heart, tune into your breath, even just take a moment to breathe and settle whenever you start to feel anxious or overwhelmed. Overwhelm's a big one. And then you reel yourself back in, and then you again have access to your superpowers, your energy, your intuition, and what the feedback that your body is giving you.
So beautiful. Okay, so you're talking about the breath and the heart. And right before that, my mind kept going back to, oh, Shayla, the thing that I learned from you, the very beginning was that diamond light portal of the heart center. And one of the themes that keeps coming back up in my reality is using your heart, dropping down into the heart. And it's so beautiful, like everything that you teach about life and then mindset. But I think, like even going a little bit deeper and teaching us how to live from this portal and from the heart. And what would our society be like if we did that more as well? And, that's a whole nother conversation. We're not going to go there today, but you have this beautiful, meditation. So if you guys want to know more about what Waxela does, you can go to her website. We're going to have you tell everybody where to go here in a second. But that is one of the things that just really stands out to me is you're just such a heart-centered person, and you don't just talk all this stuff either. This is how she actually operates from the heart. And no wonder Elke1 found you. No wonder Lucia Light, right? All these other technologies, but it's just, I don't know, it's just such a beautiful thing that you bring to humanity. And I'm gonna do it. Thank you so much for all the work that you do with so many people, and you're such an inspiration. I actually am getting treated. And it's just an honor to have you here and to be able to have this conversation with you. So thank you for your time and energy, and
Thank you. And likewise, I'm so grateful to have found the two of you. You guys walk your talk, and I love to be with people that, you're doing the work. You're not just talking about the work. You're doing it, and you've done it, and you keep doing it. And that's why we connect so much.
Crying.
But yeah, the heart. So I don't know if you wanted me to answer that briefly, or just save that for another.
I think it's another podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And if you're interested in learning more, go to Waxela's YouTube channel, Waxela Sananda at YouTube. So it's youtube.com/@Waxela Sananda. So you can find her there, and it will be in the show notes. So one more time, tell people where they can find you, and then we will go into our approximately 5-minute or so Elke1 prosperity meditation.
Yeah, well, like you said, and I'll just spell it WAXELA SANANDA. The X is like an SH, but that's how it's spelled. And the podcast, The Alchemy of Ascension, can be found on Spotify, on iTunes, all the regular places. So that's easy to find. And if you just type my name, you're going to find me anyway. So
excellent. Thank you so much for being here with us. This was just a really fun episode for us.
My pleasure. Thanks, you guys. It's been so great.
All right, we're going to put the mic down and meditate.
How do you want to record it?
Just as we are,
with them on Zoom or on mic?
aren't we on both?
Oh, so she's gonna hold the mic, we're just doing
Yeah,
ours now.
we're just,
Okay.
yeah,
Gotcha.
I volunteered to hold LP1 during the thing.
Okay, so let's begin by closing your eyes if you're in a place where you can. If you're driving a car, then you probably need to keep them open. And then just tune into your breath. So just get in touch with your breath and let that breath bring you present. With each breath, when you breathe in, just feel yourself, feel your energy, feel your breath. And now I know for those listening, you're not going to be able to see the LQ1 unless you're watching the video, but you can just imagine. And when you hear the words LQ1, there is a frequency that goes with it that is an energetic field. So you're tuning in to the field that is LQ1. And so you're bringing your attention, you're feeling that field, just noticing how it's affecting your body. And this technology moves across time and space. It's multidimensional, it's angelic and galactic. So it can reach you wherever you are. And it works on intention. So we're going to use the intention of prosperity. And whatever that might mean for you, maybe it's an abundance of income, maybe the prosperity for you is more in your relationships or any other area of life where you desire to prosper. And so set your intention to open your field to greater prosperity. And in that, go ahead and take a deep breath and just imagine yourself opening like a flower, opening to allow this beautiful energy that is supportive and nurturing, and its desire is to enhance your experience. It wants to work with you. It chooses to work with you and bring you more energy, more wellness, more prosperity, greater abundance, harmonious relationships. So you can kind of focus in on one of those areas or be general to all. Just imagine opening your field to receive and allow. This energy is around you, it's holding you, it's coming in like, you can think of it like stardust, ready to support you in all that you do, ready to bring you a greater experience of life in your body, in this realm. And know that this energy is an energy of benevolence, of love, of prosperity, and it is pouring into you. You can imagine it pouring in to your crown, the top of your head, and let that energy move down, like you can think of it as raindrops coming down through your central column, your spine, through your heart, just feeling it open up your energy field, your chakras, opening up your energy centers as it's moving down to the base of the spine. And now, as you're feeling your energy expanding, you're breathing, imagine allowing that energy to go all the way down to the center of the earth and tap into a crystalline sphere at the center of the earth, where this energy is abundant and flowing up through the earth back into your body. And then up through your body, all the way up to imagine a sun above your head and tune into the energy of the sun, the light, the photon energy, the life that it brings, and let that come back down again into your body and center in your heart. And feel this surge of life energy for wellness, for prosperity, for greater harmony in all of your relationships. And just let yourself open to whatever point feels perfect for you to receive it. And take a deep breath and just feel how that feels in your body. Sometimes people feel tingling, opening sensation. Just letting yourself absorb all of that beautiful energy. And then go into your heart center. You might even want to place a hand over your heart and move into a space of gratitude. Gratitude for the support that this LQ1 energy brings us, and even a greater gratitude for the benevolence and the love that this realm is full of, knowing that it is available to you in every moment with every breath. So again, take a deep breath into that experience of gratitude in your heart. And then just bring your energy back to your heart, back to your body. Feel your body again as you're coming out, feeling refreshed and renewed with this new frequency of energy. And then come back to full presence and open your eyes. And for the rest of the day, I would just recommend hydrate, drink extra water, get out in nature, soak up some sunshine, and be in the spirit of joy. Thank you for joining us.